Hello and welcome to BitGartner's August office hours. My name is John Kowalski. I'm part of the marketing team here at BitGartner and I'd like to welcome you. Today's topic will be measurement of effect coatings, excuse me. Today's speaker, we have our application specialist, Mr. Noah Morgan, with us. If you're unfamiliar with our office hours format, it's a little bit different. We usually have a shortened presentation, usually lasts 20-25 minutes. Then the rest of the time is yours for asking questions, any comments, any need for clarification, even if there's any challenges going on in your own facility that you'd like some help with. The time is yours. We got our expert on the phone here. So if you do have a question or something that's bugging you or something we can help with, log it in the chat box located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and we'll get to it immediately following the presentation. So with that, Noah, it is all yours, sir. Oh, one other thing, we are recording this as well. And if you immediately following the presentation, you'll receive a link to that recording. Feel free to share that with any colleagues or watch it, listen to it later. So there you go. Now it's really yours, Noah. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, John. Thanks, everybody, for joining today. Like John said earlier, my name is Noah Morgan. I'm the application specialist here at BitGartner. And today I want to talk about measuring effect coatings, why we need it, why it's different than regular coatings, and really everything about it. And hopefully you can leave today with a good understanding of the different effect coatings out there and everything about it. So off the bat, we want to talk about the three different types of pigments. So everyone should be familiar with absorption pigments. When someone talks about a pigment, they're usually talking about an absorption pigment. It's basically a pigment that will absorb certain wavelengths and reflect back to other wavelengths. And this is what gives objects their colors. So if an object is green, essentially what's happening is all other colors are being reflected out from that green or being absorbed by that pigment, and it is reflecting back the green colors of the wavelength. And so that's what the absorption pigment is essentially the most used pigments throughout every industry. And then another pigment we have is the metallic pigments. And what these are, it's almost like a mirror like reflection of light. So there's specialized pigments where they will reflect white light back. So rather than the absorption pigments which are reflecting back color, these pigments are reflecting back white light. And then below that we have the pearl luster pigments, and these are a very interesting and very unique type of pigment. They're transparent to certain wavelengths and reflective to others. So essentially, it'll give you a color flop as you change angles, as you change your viewing angle when looking at an object with these types of pigments on them. And you often see them in pearlescent cars or very fancy cars, where as you're looking at that car, and it drives by, you're seeing this color flop of, different colors. It could be, white to dark color flop, where it's getting darker as you see the other sides of the vehicle, or it could be a dark to white color flop, where you're seeing it go from a darker color to a lighter color. And so these different pigments play a role in how we're going to see an object, right? And so on this next slide here, this is essentially what's being, this is essentially the geometry of inside of a multi-angle color measurement instrument. And so you can see here all these, you need a light source. So we have our light source in the instrument itself, and then we have these 6 different angles that we can use for a color measurement. And we'll start on the left side. So we have 110 degrees. And what that is, it's basically, that's our other end of the spectrum, where we're normally not going to see that angle unless we're looking down at an object. Normally we have a 45-degree angle, That's usually with regular color measurement instruments for absorption pigments. But when we're talking about these different metallic flakes and metallic pigments and these pure luster pigments, we need to use these other angles. And so we have 15 degrees, 25, 45, 75, 110, and we also include a negative 15 degrees, and that's for this specifically for those pure luster pigments. So with these multi-angle measurement geometries, hopefully everyone's familiar with wavelengths and spectral curves. What a spectral curve is essentially is a fingerprint of a color. So we take the wavelengths that our eyes can see, which is from 400 to 700 nanometers, and that's the visible light. And a color, say for instance, this example here is a solid green. And so we see the spectral curve is highest at the green point of the wavelengths. And so this is a green color, and we see all of these angles is what the color measurement device is picking up throughout the wavelengths here. And so we see 110, 75, 45, 25, 15, and negative 15 along the spectral curve. And they're essentially all on top of each other. And that's what you want to see for a solid green color like this example. So it all makes sense when they're combined like that because it's a solid color. There's no special effects in it that are making the colors change at all. There's no color flop. There's no metallic flakes that are affecting the color. As you look at it through every angle, it's still going to be that same solid green color. So this is what you would expect to see. Now in another example, we have a metallic green. And in this metallic green, we can see that upon every different angle of measurement, they're almost completely different. And so what this is telling us is as we change our viewing angle, we're going to see a different color green than what we're seeing at 45 degrees, which is the regular angle. And this is important because if you're trying to match different panels together, and as you change angles, some panels might not match up at a certain angle, right? So if you have one panel that's coming up to another panel and they're both at different angles, depending on the way you're looking at it, they could not match up and look completely different to each other. But if you look at them flat on, they both match. So this is really something you want to look for. And in some colors, it's more drastic than others. So the last example was a metallic green, and then this is a metallic silver. And we can really see it because in metallic silvers, they're usually on contours of cars where as you're looking at it, that silver is going to color flop and get really dark at certain angles. And that's going to give that contour of that car a more drastic look and make it look more sleek and attractive to our eyes. And so in this example here, this is measuring that metallic silver. And you can see at 75 and 110, it's almost completely flat, so it's very dark. Whereas if you look at negative 15 degrees and 15 degrees, it's a very light color. So it's very, white. And so it's really important to look at all these different angles when you're measuring these specialized pigments, right? And with that, we also bring into the sparkles into the effects, right? So we have, so depending on our viewing conditions, sparkles will pop out more to our eye. And so it's usually under direct sunlight. We can see high sparkles and low sparkles. Usually when you're looking outside at a car, if it's under direct light, when you're looking at it at a certain angle, you're going to see lots of really bright sparkles in it versus when you're looking at it at a different angle, it'll be very low sparkle and you won't really see that much. So when we're looking at these sparkles, it's also important to note the intensity of the sparkle and how many sparkles are in that area, because this can play a role in what that color is. And so it's all with the sparkles, it's not so much as our viewing angle, but it's more as where's the light coming from. So if it's coming from directly overhead, it might look different than when it's coming, from the horizon. So, time of day could change the way we see it as well. And with sparkle, another effect we have is graininess. It's not directly related to sparkle, but it's its own entity essentially. It shows us more the texture, the structure, and the coarseness of a coating. And so it's for graininess, you can see it better under diffused light. So if you, instead of direct light where you're seeing just sparkles, graininess would be, say, cloud cover. And you can, if you look at the side of a car, you can see all these different grains in that coating. And you can differentiate between high graininess and low graininess. And once again, it's important because if you have two panels under this diffused light, and you didn't account for the type of graininess in that coating, these two different panels might look completely different under, a cloudy day, which is a problem if, you're selling to consumers. So it's important to look at all these different characteristics of a coating. And you can see potential causes of graininess are flake type and flake size. So if these different flakes if the flakes are different in these coatings, the orientation of the flakes, so if they're not all completely flat, if they're different angles. And so, like I said before, it's important to look at the color, but it's also important to look at these other effects too. So these sparkles and graininess. And because when you're looking at a color, the sparkle and graininess are not going to be picked up as well. And so you have to come up with a way for all three of these different effects to be picked up. So for flake characterization, this is what one of our instruments do. So you have the camera analysis, and it uses a chip to correlate to the human eye. And essentially you have an illuminant that changes different angles, and that'll give you how the flake lays on the surface. It'll give you the sparkle representation, so that sparkle intensity and the sparkle size. And it essentially correlates to, it'll simulate a sunny sky or a cloudy sky, and that'll give you these different values for sparkle and the graininess. And you can see the angles for it is 15, -45, or 15, 45, and 75 degrees. And so these are the instruments that we use to measure these different effects. We have the BICMAC, which is used for the color, the sparkle, sparkle intensity, sparkle area, sparkle size. It also measures the graininess under those same angles, but with diffused light. And it's just a way to get values for what we're seeing. So when you're in the car industry and you have two panels, you want to make sure they match. So with this instrument, you can test it on these different panels, so that when they come together, they're going to correlate to what we see visually. And then we have our Victor spectra effect, which is essentially a light booth made specifically for these effect coatings, where we can change angles of the sample, and then also change from diffused light to direct light with all the different illuminants. That way we can really see for ourselves in our own eyes how these panels or samples change under the different lights, and we can see the graininess and the sparkles and the color flops. All right, so with that, I'm gonna hand it back to you, John.
Quick and easy. Gotta like that. yeah, anybody out there, if you have any questions, comments, would like to know, get Noah to dive in a little deeper, just jot it down in the chat box and we'll get right to it. Until then, Noah and I will just chat. How about that? Noah, what are the common questions you always get from customers when they're trying to measure or to take measurements from effect coatings?
Usually it'll be with another instrument. So if someone's using, let's say, a Spectre 2 guide to measure one of these effect coatings, which is essentially, instead of having the different angles, it's just using the one angle. So it's using a 45 degree. And it's not telling the whole story of what that sample is doing. And I have a lot of times where people will try to compare results from the BICMAC, which is the multi-angle, to the Spectre 2 guide, which is the single angle. And their data will differ from each other, especially on the 45 degree angle. And this is because in the multi-angle instrument, there's just a single light source coming from a single angle. Whereas in the single angle instrument, it's circumferential light. So there's light coming from the entire radius of the sample, or the entire diameter of the sample. So coming from all angles versus coming from a single angle. And you have to think about it. If you have more light casting down over a sample, it's going to give you a different or a more accurate answer rather than a light coming down from a single angle. However, with that being said, that difference is very small and very minuscule, so it's nothing to be concerned of, but it is something to note.
Definitely. And it's comparing apples to apples. You have to, and some of the multi-angle stuff doesn't necessarily translate to the world of 045 or sphere. So are there other key points that you can give our audience on what are, the top, handful of things to look for when they're going in to take measurements, to make sure they're nice and consistent, make sure, the direction and the process is the same, for each measurement. Are there a list of things that you go through with customers that you could share with us?
Yeah, certainly. So when looking at the sparkle values in your process here, it's important to note that if you have a difference in a 75 degree sparkle, so in the 75 angle, and you see a difference in that, it'll often it'll correlate to an error in the process. So that how it's being applied, how that paint is being applied onto an object. Whereas if you're looking at the 15 degree angle and the sparkle, that'll show an error in the paint formulation. So it'll show an error in, say, the size of sparkle, and the 75 degree angle will show an error in how the sparkles are laying on that sample. So that'll tell you there's an error in how it's being sprayed onto that sample.
So really, by looking at the sparkle index, like you said, the 15 and the 75 in particular, you can tell that there's an issue or something going on with the process, or I'm sorry, with the formulation on one hand, and then two, on the process of how it's being applied. Is that correct?
Right.
That's kind of cool. So it gets into the whole process side of things. Got a couple questions popped in here. Thanks, folks. From Laura, is it possible to characterize metals, micas, in powder coatings? If yes, what could be a good ratio to use in terms of base to pigment dilutions? Let me read that again for you.
Yeah, read that one more time.
Yeah. Is it possible to characterize metals or micas in powder coatings?
That is a good question. I wouldn't say so technically you could characterize it by the size and the shapes.
Huh?
But I don't think that you'd be able to tell the differences between the mica and the metal, if that's what
Okay.
that question's asking.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. Laura, let us do some research on that, and either Noah or one of our regional salespeople will get back with you, with a better answer. But I think you're right, Noah. I think we can, measure it and tell, the angles of the fleck, but we wouldn't be able to necessarily tell if it's a mica or a metal or what type of fleck that is. So stay tuned, Laura. We'll get back with you. Next question from Don here. Is it possible to use the Bic Mac in a production setting on a daily basis to check color against the standard? And then, part two of that question, how fast can you check a part? We have a 4.5 minute tack time.
Yeah, absolutely. So in most of the automotive plants in the world, actually, the Bic Mac is used in a production setting every day, usually testing against standards. So, the OEMs will come up with a standard color, and then that data will be put into the Bic Mac. And then from there, on the production line, they'll take it and measure around the car, and then they'll get that data. And if they have an error come up, the Bic Mac will tell them that, hey, this isn't matching, and then they can pull that aside or pause, stop the line. So yeah, it's Bic Mac is used in most production lines around the world for color analysis and effect codings.
Yeah, and I know we do have a robotic version of both the Bic Mac Eye and also our Wave Scan. And a lot of those are incorporated into lines. So I don't think the 4.5 minute tack time will be an issue at all. I know it measures a lot quicker than that. So yeah, we can have someone reach out to you too to talk more about that, Don, to look at your current system there and see how it would make sense to incorporate a Bic Mac Eye into your measurement process. So great question.
In regards to that second part of the question, it takes roughly around 6 seconds for the test
to take for the measurement. Yeah, right. And that's for the eye, right? Bic Mac Eye.
Yes.
What about our Wave Scan robotic? Is that? I know it's similar. Is that a little bit quicker?
It depends on the length of the measurement. So you can adjust it to be a short measurement or a longer measurement if you have a larger surface area that you're testing. I'd say it's roughly around the same.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot there. I'd say, this stuff. You live and breathe this stuff. I don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So other questions, keep them coming in. This is a great time to, pick Noah's brain. And, if you're having any challenges at your own facilities or with suppliers, we'd love to be able to help you out here. Are there other things? I had one other question for you, but I lost it there, Noah. Let's see here. What other, you talked a little bit about the kind of tips of how someone should get started with measuring effect codings. Other than a consistent process, what else would you recommend?
I would recommend, one of the things that's overlooked a lot of times is the direction that you're measuring.
Yeah.
And so that's important because, a lot of times you don't always want to measure side to side, especially for, automotive industries. You want to measure from the top down. So where the sun's usually going to be coming from is where you're going to want to measure. So and on the Bic Mac, there's an arrow that shows you which way the illuminant's coming from. And so normally you want to orientate that to where if the sun's going to be shining overhead, you want to put that to where you're going to be measuring almost from the top down. That way, when when it goes out in the real world, you can be pretty confident that those measurements are going to be what people are visually seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that measurement direction does affect your readings, and, like Noah said, do it in more of a vertical fashion, and consistently across all shifts, all plans. So your numbers are an apples to apples comparison. Where and how does gloss play into this?
That's a good question.
I really put you on the spot.
So with the gloss, right, it gets picked up by the angles. I want to say it gets picked up by the angles. I might have to do some research on that, John. That's a good question there.
Okay, hey, I stumped Noah. How about there's a first. And because like the Big Mac, it does not have a built-in gloss meter. Is that correct?
Right.
I know our other color handhelds, but that do, but this does not. Okay, yeah, we can get information back. That's another good webinar topic. Maybe we can talk about gloss one of these days. Well, I'll look at our schedule and talk to you, and we'll get that scheduled out. That'd be a good topic.
Absolutely.
When you're taking measurements, we're talking multi-angle with the Big Mac eye here. Is there a recommended number of measurements to take, like per panel, if you're doing, the side of a truck or something, larger format like that?
I would say, you can't go wrong with more. Usually 3 to 5 or even 1 is fine. But usually what I see a lot of times is panel to panel matching.
Mm-hmm.
So say if you have a door on a car, you're going to want to match, the parts that are around that door. So you could say the rear door, you want to match those two sides up against each other. And then you're going to want to match the fascia up against that door. And so you're essentially going to make sure that all that data that you're getting from those measurements are going to match each other. So, and for that example I just gave, you could do one measurement on the door closest on the front door up against the back door, and then you on the other side you would measure the back door up against the front door.
Mm-hmm.
And just one measurement there, and then match the data, make sure everything looks right and matches, and that way you can be assured that when it goes out to the dealership and it's sitting there out in the sunlight, everything looks exactly the same and it matches up perfectly.
Yep, getting things in harmony. How about that? That's the name of the game. Awesome. Let's see what else. Other questions, folks? Quite a bunch today. Other things you want to talk about? Maybe the light booth a little bit. I know how the interior has kind of a floating panel in there that you put the sample in, then you can check it at various angles. Maybe
right. Yeah.
It's
a very cool instrument. So basically, that top part of it folds out, and so it essentially creates a roof over you, and then this felt material surrounds you so that no outside light can interfere with what you're seeing. Mm-hmm. And then you look through a porthole, essentially, with your sample inside on a platform, and with a handle on the side, you can change the angle, and it'll tell you where you're at. So you can go from a 45-degree angle to a 110-degree angle, and you can have 2 panels in there, and you can see with diffused light or direct light how that sample is reacting. Mm-hmm. And then you can change the angle to 15 degrees and see what the color flop is. And it's very cool to see color flop in real life without having to move, bend yourself and move around a vehicle. when you can just
Yeah.
stand in one place and move a lever up and down.
Exactly. And I know that, the best scenario is to actually look at samples, comparing to the standard with a viewing booth, a light box here, as well as instrumentation. Is that correct? And is, kind of what's the best or recommended process? Are you looking at it, with your eye first and then the instrumentation, or vice versa?
Absolutely. To your first question, you always want to, check it with your eyes and an instrument.
Mhm.
But normally, what I'll see done is you use the BICMAC to get the data for it, and then if you see something wrong, like if a panel is not matching another panel, then you would pull that to the side, and then you
Yep.
would take a look at it with visually. So
Mhm.
usually with a light booth, or if it's a larger part, in a light room.
Yeah. Yep. I know we do have several of those installations all over the place. So, okay, great. Thank you. Another question here, and you touched on it, but maybe you could go in depth a little more. How does the DOI of a paint job affect the reading of a panel?
So I believe that would give you um, almost that would play a part in that graininess value that you would get.
Okay. Okay. So I'm trying to come up with the follow-up question to that. Okay, so based on your paint job and the distinctness of image, and I guess the quality of that would then play into the graininess and either, affect you positively or negatively if you have a part off of spec or off of standard.
Right. That's right.
Marketing
That's it.
speak. Okay. Did that answer your question, Don? Or do we need to go in a little further? But maybe just touch on the graininess a little bit more, if you don't mind, Noah.
Yeah. So pull it up here. Right. So graininess is essentially like a salt and pepper look of a. It's almost like a micro texture,
Okay.
and it's seen under diffused light. So if you're looking under direct light, you're not going to see it as much. It's not going to be as prominent. But if you're under diffused light, so cloud cover
Hmm.
is a good example of that, you'll be able to see it. And it's usually if you're close up and looking at it. And you can see in the example of the high graininess, it's almost like a TV that's
Yeah.
on the wrong channel. Whereas the low graininess, it's very, you know, it's hard to describe almost. It's just that
Yeah.
salt and pepper look.
Yeah. You're
Um,
dialing it in a little bit more with the low graininess compared to the high.
right. It's almost like you're zooming out or something.
Hmm.
And the causes of it is, if the flakes are disoriented, so they're not laying completely flat. The flake size and type, if you have different sizes in there and they're all kind of just scattered about,
Yeah.
and just the type of flakes in there too, that could all play a role. Um, so if you have a standard that you're trying to match to, and it's out of the standard, you know you want to look at that, and it could be a part of the DOI in that measurement. And the
What?
wave scan,
Yeah. Go
what's
ahead.
that?
No, keep
The
going.
wave scan is meant to get that DOI value. So
Hmm.
that's one of our other instruments. Um, and so you, ideally you would want to have both of these instruments working at the same time. So one of them would be measuring, the DOI and the waviness of the panels, whereas
Yeah.
the BICMAC is measuring, how they look visually, like with the sparkle, the graininess, and the color all in one. think you cut out there, John, a little bit. You say that again?
Okay, you there, Noah? Sorry
Yep.
about that. I had a Bluetooth issue. Okay, next question here. I don't think you heard it from William. Is it possible to have a high graininess with a smooth, high gloss surface? For example, the visual effect is below a smooth surface. William stumped you. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well,
Possible high graininess with smooth, high gloss surface.
well,
It's a good question.
all right, I think we got to send you something for that, William. We'll get back with you on the answer, and we'll dig around the marketing closet, see what we got. We can send you because you did it. You stumped the Noah. No problem. Another one from Don here. Yes, I did have 4 of these machines and getting ready to put them in production. Personally, not a lot of experience with them. Okay, getting some training next week. We'll get in touch with you, Don, and see if we can. If there's someone in your area, or in your region based on their travels, if they can pop in and give you a hand with that to get you set up. So we'll take care of you there, Don. So no worries. What else? How else can we help here? Anyone else want to try to stump the Noah? Like I said, we're recording this. Even these questions and answers too. Feel free to send them to a colleague. Listen to them, at a later time or date. If at all, anytime questions come up. I forgot to answer or ask this question during the webinar or just something that comes up, feel free to hit reply to any of the marketing messages because it'll come to, my team and we'll get the question funneled to Noah or one of the technical experts in the area. Let's see. We also do have several other webinars scheduled for the rest of the year too, and we're starting to put together our 2024 calendar already, if you can believe that. Next office hours, we have a couple on dispersion. We have measuring texture. And we do September 27th. We're talking about gloss theory and applications. So we'll get into gloss a little bit more. October's color difference equations, followed by transmission haze and clarity for coatings, plastics, and glass. And then our December program, what is that? December 6th is kind of a free for all, no specific topic. We're just here. We'll get a lot of the regional sales managers and business line managers on the line as well. And it's really for you, the audience, to ask your questions on color, appearance, physical test, anything we can help with. So other questions out there? And if not, I know we're all busy and have lots of things to do. We won't carry this on any longer than we have to. Noah, any final words on measurement of effect coatings?
Nothing from me.
You covered it. All right, you got a couple homework assignments, and folks.
Yes, I do.
And we'll be getting back with you. Appreciate your questions and comments, and appreciate you joining some time with us. And hope you learned something about measuring effect coatings. And we look forward to seeing you on future BitGardener web seminars. So thank you all and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, John.
You bet. Thank you, Noah.